All right, guys, real quick. I'm going to show you exactly how a debt-based system works, okay? So it all starts with you and me or a business owner or businesses here and there. So what happens is we get paid. What do? Well, we deposit our money into the banks. And the banks, essentially, what they do is they operate off a system called fractional reserve lending. What this basically means is they are legally required to keep a certain portion of your money and loan out the rest. Now, generally, this is how banks are supposed to function. Get a little bit of money and then loan out the rest. So essentially, let's start with this. You dump your money into the bank. The big bank keeps, let's say, $1,000. They keep about $100 in the safe for you. And then that other $900 gets loaned out to businesses and different people who need houses, cars, or different investments that they want to make. So think about it. This is where about 92 to 96 of a money supply is expanded in our system here, right? If you start with $1,000 worth of money, right, and the bank keeps $100 and they loan out $900, remember, you still personally have $1,000 in your checking account. When you open your balance, there's $1,000 in there, but really $900 of that is out and about in some guy's hands buying a house or in some guy's business's hands making a sale. So what happens is all of a sudden there's $1,900 in the money supply. So what happens when we buy those cars or we buy that house? Well, it goes back into that bank account of the person you bought the car from or the business you bought the car from or house from, and then guess what? It gets put back into the big banks. They take a little cut of that, and then the process starts all over again. This is what's called fractional reserve lending. And one of the most important things that you guys have to understand about debt is that debt and currency are the exact same thing. Actually, they're two sides of the same coin. Because let's say you have $1,000 worth of debt, right? Or worth of credit, right? You get $1,000, the bank credits you. Well, instantly it creates $1,000 worth of debt. So you borrow $1,000. Well, guess what? You're also gonna need not only the $1,000 to pay off, but you're gonna need the $1,000 plus $1 in interest, because interest is also associated with debt. But where are you gonna get that dollar from? Well, that has to get borrowed into existence too. So now you have to worry about that dollar, and then that doubles the amount of debt you have. Guys, what you have to understand is every single dollar in existence, it is owed to someone else. This is how a debt-based system works, okay? So the more the balance you have, the interest you have to pay on the balance you have, that dollar has to be borrowed from somewhere. You got to understand that when it comes to generating loans, there are two ways debt-based systems can crush people, right? It can crush people in two ways. One is, hey, what happens when all of a sudden this system keeps going up and up and up and up and up and up, and eventually it hits a certain limit? Well, it collapses under its own weight. What do I mean by that? See, the average household has at least 5 forms of debt. There are 3 to 5 forms of debt, whether it's a mortgage, credit card, whether it's a car loan, things like that. Different types of debt. And what happens when the interest payments on those debt starts to get too much versus the income that they're actually bringing in? Well, guess what? They go into what's called default. And what happens is these big banks and these institutions come in and scoop up the assets in order to basically recoup their costs. That's how it works. So it only benefits a few people in a few different ways. That's how it functions. So realistically, key points that you guys have to understand when you're looking at the system here. One, every dollar in existence is owed to someone else. Every single dollar. Look, I have a $5 bill right in front of me, and right there in the corner, it says this note is a legal tender of all debts, public and private. You guys are walking around right now with physical debt in your hands. That's how money works, okay? This right here is the representation of debt, like we talked about here. One cannot exist without the other. This $5 bill is owed to someone else. And number 2, a debt-based system only benefits a few. It only benefits a few. And those are the guys who own the debt, right? Because if you default on your loan, and this goes to governments too, right? And when we talk about deficit spending, this goes to deficit spending too, because the government's gonna spend all its way. What if the debt hits, 30 trillion? People are like, no, that's not gonna happen. 40 trillion. What happens? What happens when it starts to get to the point where people say, hey, I don't believe that we can pay that debt back? It happens to individuals like you and me, and we have to file for bankruptcy. bankruptcy, what happens when it happens to a nation? All right, so this is one of the things that you got to understand. It benefits people in two different ways. When you default, your creditors come and they take the assets in order to try to recoup their losses in some way. And the benefit goes to them because not only have they been getting the interest on the interest payments you've been making on these loans, but also once you default, they also come back and legally repossess the property or the asset back from you in order to sell it again. So it benefits a few people. So you got to understand there are two ways, guys, that you can enslave a nation and you can enslave people. And that's either through physical force or war or by debt. And as you can see in the situation we're in right now, we're all slaves and we have to understand that. You have to understand how this thing works. Understand how this thing works so you can use it to your advantage to earn your freedom. By definition, we are being enslaved by these things. All right, you have to understand how your dollar works, understand where you need to go, how you need to conduct yourself, and where you need to be, and use this to your advantage, okay? Because this isn't gonna last long. It's not. So, again, when we understand and we're educated about how our money works, how our economy works, how the debt system works, the more power you can have to yourself, the more power you can empower yourself to make the right decisions. And that's pretty much it.